Welcome back. Well, Dr. Joe Abah joins us now. He's the Director General, Bureau of Public Service Reforms, to give his perspective on the ongoing economic summit. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you, Timberlake.
Well, public service reforms is key to a lot of success, if we could use that word, at the end of the day, because they'll have recommendations, and if it has to be implemented, well, they have to think differently. But at the moment, there are those who will say, the stage as it is with the public sector, no, is it public sector? Yeah, public service, not in the best of shape at the moment. What will be your assessment of the sector now?
I think that will be a very fair assessment, but I think we need to put things in context. We've come out of a long period of military rule, and we've only been a democracy again for the last 15 years. The military rule is against due process. It's against doing things properly. It's a command and control type of structure, and so we've slowly been rebuilding what had actually been lost through decades of arbitrariness. But we've made quite a lot of. Are we too slow? In some areas we may be, but in other areas we've made tremendous progress. Not many people realize it, but we've actually made quite a lot of progress on issues of corruption. For instance, 15 years ago, we were the second most corrupt country in the world. 2, 3, 4 years before that, we were the most corrupt country in the world. We're now the 36th most corrupt. There's still a lot to do, of course. We've saved through our proper procurement processes in excess of 628 billion in the last 7 years. We've put in an integrated payroll and personal information system that has saved government 185 billion and has gotten rid of 65,000 ghost workers. We've successfully defeated Ebola. We've eradicated Guinea worm. We're on the verge of completely eradicating polio.
On the broad-based perspective.
Well, this is the work that the public service has done to improve the country.
Okay, tell us, what does your agency do?
My agency has a number of roles. The first is to initiate reforms where there is a need for them, and so an example is integrated payroll and personal information system that I just talked about. That was initiated by my bureau. We also monitor and evaluate reforms to see what is working and what is not, and not too long ago we completed an assessment of all the key reforms that have happened over the last 15 years to determine what has worked and what has not. As an example, it was obvious to us that the Servicom initiative hasn't fulfilled its potential, but at the same time that Nigeria has made tremendous progress on issues of health, on issues of the reform of the public finances. We now have ATM cards that we can use as part of the global community. We have cashless banking. We have the Treasury single account. There are a number of areas in which we've made very good progress, but there's a lot more to do.
When is a lot more to do? Perhaps if we can quickly look at the future, your plans for the sector. What other areas you think that you haven't been able to touch on that you think that you should look into now?
I think we haven't focused sufficiently on our citizens, and I think we need to put our citizens at the center of our reforms. A lot of the reforms we've done so far have been internally focused, and they were necessary because we're coming out of a system where there were basically no rules. So we needed to put in a number of rule-based reforms, but now we need to shift the focus on citizens and make sure that everything we do is driven by what our citizens need. And so I think for the first time in our history, my bureau actually did a public perception survey of what citizens feel about the reforms of government.
What did you find?
We found that the story was mixed. In a number of areas, we're actually surprised to find that 65% of our citizens were happy with the healthcare they received. That was a surprise. The other thing that became very obvious is that
that's really a surprise.
Yes.
What was the survey done?
It was done in November 2014.
No, I mean where?
Where? In all the 36 states, including Borno, Yobe, and Adamawa.
Okay.
13,500 households, 400 businesses, 400 public sector organizations. And you know, we found some things that we already knew. which, as an example, that the level of corruption was going up. And so, people told us that the levels of corruption, they perceived that the levels of corruption had risen between 2011 and 2014 when we did the survey. As you can imagine, it was an interesting finding in the run-up to an election.
I'd like to see that.
And we're happy we had the courage to say it.
Let me give you another example, because I happen to have the opportunity to go a friend to a state public service where I think he was trying to access land, and so they were taking files from one place to the other, and now it was that, as sad as it is, almost every office he went, if he didn't do something, he's wasting his time. And this is this year. And many people say, look, this is what we face in that sector. And so one wonders, so if we do all that reforms, as impressive as they sound, what's going on with that one?
What's going on in that one is that corruption is a binding constraint. It's a constraint that unless we tackle, we'll find it very difficult to make progress. And it's not limited to the private sector, to the public sector. You have corruption in the private sector. You have it in the banks. You have it. It's endemic in our system. You have it in our universities. Our students have to do what they call sort the lecturer and pay to get marks, or they sleep with female students. We have it with people trying to influence
those cases. If certain persons are reported in certain cases, actions are taken.
Absolutely.
So who takes action? Because people don't even know, who do we call?
Okay.
If somebody tells us you must do A, B, C, D, or E.
Okay, that's a valid point. The first thing to do is to report it to whoever is responsible for that service.